Good morning. Welcome to another episode of Men on a Mission. Today we have two founders from Amicus, right? And they're going to share with us about divorce cases, separation, and which party is actually the most badly affected when it comes to cases like that. Good morning, both of you.
Morning, Tammy.
Hi, Tammy.
Hi. Thanks for coming on this podcast. And I think what you really do is so important. Could you give yourself a short introduction to what parts of the area that you do in the business and who do you help? Joan first.
Oh, okay. So I'm a coach. I'm a certified coach and including divorce coach. I'm a certified divorce coach. And what I do is really to help clients who are seeking divorce or who are thinking about divorce or who are stuck post-divorce and do not know what to do. And I come in to support them in their journey.
Nicholas?
I'm a registered psychologist. I've been working with vulnerable young people and their families for about 20 years now. Yeah, and through the process of separation and divorce, eventually for some families, I support young people in understanding what that means for them and how they can continue to maintain a meaningful relationship post-divorce.
Let's talk about the interesting dynamics you all have here, right? Because usually you talk about a psychologist and coaching work. It's kind of separate, right? So what is the inspiration behind coming together?
I guess the reason why we see value in our respective area of work is because for my kind of work, it's quite clinical, right? And we talk about mental health issues, like for example, having depression, being very anxious, and also a sense of loss and how do you deal with that, grief for that matter, right? So all that can be dealt in therapy, what happens after that? That's where the coaching comes in, and we hope to be able to provide that kind of value for families going through litigation so that they can be in a better space and then at least the family will be able to thrive still in the post-separation or post-divorce situation.
Yeah. So from a coaching space perspective, when somebody go through clinical treatment, going through counseling and all that, they probably just stuck there. How do they move on with life? And that's where coaching comes in. And that's why between Nick and myself, we are very passionate about providing holistic support to a person who come to us, or they have got treatment, they have got counseling treatment. We want to also help them to be a better version of themselves. That's where coaching comes in to support them. And of course, at the end of it all, our passion is really to contain the family relationship. I mean, especially, unfortunately, in the course of a separation. Yeah.
So it's quite interesting. That means, if I understand this correctly, right, Nicholas, you focus on therapy work for people who are going through, right, certain negative feelings or certain instances in their life that is not so positive, right? For Joan, you actually help them to become better people. Yes. So after they go through clinical therapy or even during the course of it, right, they want to maybe form new habits. Yes. They want to become a better version of themselves. So that's when they will look for you.
Yes.
I see. Is there something?
So for avoidance of doubt, we don't just do therapy because the whole mental health sometimes requires more than therapeutic support. Right? We do a bit of assessment as well, and we do work with psychiatrists to support the intervention. So sometimes medication may be involved, so we refer them to our medical partners, doctors, but we will do the assessment. We do a psychological assessment to understand exactly what we're dealing with, and that informs our therapy. And so we'll be able to support them better.
What is it about your work that is so important?
In our view, we don't think there's enough of us out there to support families through this. I think I speak from experience because having worked within the system itself, supporting families through litigation, going through separation, even protection for some, it's a lot of work. It requires a certain amount of clinical expertise to be able to understand what family goes through. So sometimes there's also trauma involved in terms of, like, for example, families going through a lot of hurt in the form of, say, violence, for example, that may impact not just the couple relationship, but also the child's personal, emotional, psychological well-being.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about Joan in your
So
experience?
from a coaching perspective, right, it's also as they go through all the trauma and trying to make make things work for themselves. Many a times the self-awareness is not there. Self-awareness of their own mindset, their own mentality, and their own behavior. So coaching comes in to support them, to help them to unpack, what clarity do they need, to be able to stay grounded at the same time, pull out their own resources to resolve whatever issue is confronting them.
We always speak about divorced couples, we talk about the involved parties, right? But in your opinion, what do you think is the most important to take care of? Let's say a family goes through divorce or they have certain family disputes, right? What are the affected parties or things that we don't see?
For us, it's the children, especially when they're going through a contested divorce with children involved, right? And we will always make an extra effort actually to support the family in the area of like post care program or plans for their kids. Because especially the younger ones, they still need their parents and they would very much like to be with both parents. Right. The question is how can they understand this situation that they're in, that the parents have to part ways.
Yeah.
And then what would it mean for them when they have to go to a different house and no longer like coming back to the same household where parents are in the same, living environment, right? So that can be difficult for the young kids, but I think if you're talking about older kids, like for example, adolescents, because they're also finding their place in the world, finding themselves.
Yeah.
Then in addition to the questions that they ask about who they are, they're also asking about their own family. What does that mean, for them? So we need to support them as much as possible. Yeah. And then hopefully the coaching can help steer the decisions made by the parents, for themselves and for their family. But we are there to look out for the kids as much as possible. Yeah.
So for the parties concerned, right, many a times when such things happen, all they care about is really to go and look for a lawyer.
Yeah.
But when the divorce really happened, actually, the parties go through 4 different types of divorces. They go through the legal divorce. That's everyone will go through that. But at the same time, they also go through emotional divorce, financial divorce, as well as social divorce, right? The emotional divorce part, they need to, they always hold the role of a spouse or a parent.
Yeah.
So in the case of a divorce, so they got to start re-identifying their own self-identity. And that in itself can be overwhelming for them. And then when you talk about the children, in the emotional divorce, what's the impact on the child? Especially when they have got to go to different homes, especially when the parents cannot come to an agreement. And more often than not, they always leave it to the judge to make a decision on the children. And the co-parenting become very challenging. Right. So they fight it out in court. And because they don't agree with each other, they start applying for many, many kind of application in court. And in their mind, with all positive intention, they think that this is to the best interest of their children. But unknowing to themselves, they are so caught up in their fixed mindset about this is what I want for my child. But ultimately, the child suffers. Right? And then when it comes to, of course, financial divorce is about, decoupling of assets, decoupling of savings. And each party has got to start setting up their own home. And on top of that, whoever needs to provide financial support, for the other child, that become a burden. Not everybody can afford when they have got to, no longer a shared unit of finances and all those things. And when it comes to social divorce, what about the extended family? What happened to the child when one parent is not bringing the child to see their extended family, the grandparents who love them so much? And then what about their common friends? And then maybe sometimes in a certain culture, divorce is a stigma. So they end up having that social isolation. So these are the impact that many people who are thinking about divorce have not thought about it, and that's where the coaching comes in to help them to think about how do you address all these things, and importantly, the children. How do you help the child to understand that despite mommy and daddy's relationship or a divorce, both of us will still continue to love you. That kind of thing, and it's missing because the parties are so caught up in fighting each other and who is right and who is wrong, and what they carry with them are baggages. Right? They carry that, how much you have done me wrong, how much hurt you have caused me. And so in their mind are just full of all these things that they forgot the emotions of the children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, really important. So in your line of work, right, what are some consequences that you see the children have when they go through certain things like that?
I think before I come to that, I just want to highlight the fact that the work that we do adds value to the families in this way, where there's an opportunity for them to talk about what it would look like if they were to co-parent post-divorce, right? It's no more parenting within the same household already, right? And this is where I can answer your question about what are the outcomes, right? What we're looking for is, because if they don't learn how to co-parent and agree on something as they part ways, then the child would feel very torn, very separated, very anxious.
Yeah.
There's no stability for them. And it's important for young kids especially to have stability, at home, right? So therefore, while they are already like having disputes and having a lot of quarrels and arguments, for example, that already is the start of destabilization for them to have a healthy and safe space to grow. In a worst case situation where father and mother is always like screaming and shouting, and then the child has to worry about whether or not I'm going to get hurt. And it's already very scary to basically be shouted at, and let alone maybe even seeing mom and dad hitting at each other. For a child at a very young age especially, it's going to be very scary.
Yeah.
Right? If it's an adolescence, they may even feel the need to even protect one parent against the other. And that's almost like a burden on the part of the adolescents, because how is that what I'm supposed to be doing? Protecting my mom or my dad to begin with, right? And post-divorce, they are going to still have that in memory, and they're still going to feel a little bit jittery, edgy, and always on the lookout for something going to happen, or maybe even worry about the perpetrator parent coming to look for us, and they are never at the right place to develop well. So brain science informs us. In my practice, I use brain science to inform my practice.
Yeah.
That a young person in that kind of situation the brain is impacted significantly, and we really hope to prevent that for the young person that we're working with in the family going through separation.
Yeah.
As much as possible, right? Given, because every family is unique. Right, so hopefully you'll be able to support the family that way. Hopefully give a heads up to the parents about what's happening to the child. And then through the coaching, hopefully they will consider their decisions with a bit more clarity.
Yeah. So I want to add on to what Nick talked about stability, because children need stability to give them the security. Because the impact is that as they grow older, right, the sense of insecurity will carry on with their life, especially post-divorce when they are going into separate household. They don't have consistent discipline. Separate household got separate values, separate way of doing things, and the poor child is going to be very confused. And which is the right way, and especially when co-parenting do not come together to talk about what is best for the child. And let's work together, for the good of the child and for the benefit of the child, and to give the child the security, even though the child is not staying together with two parents. But that's where coaching comes in, right? I mean, coaching will help one party, whoever I'm coaching, right, to what do you want for your child? How can you then, have a healthy co-parenting with your ex-spouse? And that's really our passion about bringing the family unit relationship together. Yeah.
And this is not to say that both parents have to do the same thing.
Yeah.
I think largely, maybe this is also part of the reason why there's dispute or disagreement in the first place, because they are so different and there is no way for them to be able to see themselves complement each other or to synergize. So in a post-divorce situation, likely that's to be the case. The differences, right, still exist. That would mean that translated into real terms, meaning to say that different households have different rules, right? One is a bit more lax. You can play more computer game. The other one, no, you need to do your homework first. Then you can play computer game, for example. So there are different household rules. So again, the younger the child, in this kind of situation, they will triangulate, right? Or they will say, oh, mommy allows me to do this. Or I won't tell my dad, who's he's very strict. But my mom is okay, that kind of thing, right? And they will play the situation, not malicious, but because they're just kids, they just want to have a good time. They develop a sense of knowing how to work one parent against the other, or one parent to my advantage. Is that healthy? Is that detrimental to their development? May or may not. Depends on the temperament of the child, the personality of the child, the character of the child. We have dealt with cases where the child is just beyond control, and there's a lot of out of school issues, truancy, a lot of defiance, and no one parent can control the child, right? So how do you instill discipline in a child? How do you introduce boundaries such that at least when you go to both parents' house, there's some consistency. Yes, there will be differences, right? Mom will do different things from dad. Dad may allow certain things, mom may allow certain things, or may not allow whatever it is, but the message is the same. In terms of, say, there needs to be responsibility, there needs to be discipline, you need to work hard. All these are principles in which they can agree at a co-parenting level, where regardless of where they go, the child, especially the younger they are, they get consistent messaging, and then they will be assisted, in their learning and development moving forward. Yeah.
What does a successful co-parent family look like?
There are many examples. One example could be that of the child is actually happy going to each parent's house, and they look forward to the unique kind of quote unquote treatment, right? Or preferred parenting strategies that each parent will basically offer the child, and they look forward to maybe that having to talk about life, and bring them out to do a bit more sports, for example, as opposed to mom have a bit more talking, sharing, and they're happy, and they see both the value of both parents contributing to the development of their own life, and they can talk openly about their vulnerabilities, their struggles, and that's awesome from a developmental point of view for a child. Yeah,
I also feel that a successful co-parenting would be both parents stop judging each other. For example, if today I don't have the time to go and fetch a child, hey, I call my ex-spouse, can you fetch? Oh, no worry. That kind of healthy co-parenting, because at the end of it all, it's not about me, it's not about you, it's about the child, right? And make the child feel that whenever there's a need for either parent, the parent is there for the child. And I don't have to wait until mommy or daddy have access of me. I cannot reach out when it is not time for dad or mom to see me. So a healthy co-parenting is where I think the parents should put the children first. At the end of it all, it's not about us. We in a divorce, relationship is broken, but that does not mean that our role as a parent is broken, right? Yeah, and in order to support each other, I think the parties need to give each other space. Yeah. The parties need to give each other access and not just say, the court say you can only see them on weekends, so therefore don't come. I think in fact I always feel that open your doors. Open your door to each other, and allow the children to feel safe to go into each other's house. Because what I'm noticing is that when it comes to access by the parties, the parent who have got custody of a child will always question the child when the child come back. What do you do at daddy's house or mommy's house? What did daddy ask you about? So the child feel very stressed and very pressurized.
Yeah.
And the child wants to please both sides. And so what happened to the person? They suppress their own needs. They suppress their own emotions. They try to say things that make the parents happy. And then when you translate this to their own development as they grow older, how would they turn out to be? And so in my coaching of parties is that, at the end of it all, what can you do to become a healthy co-parent? When I say healthy, it means your mental, emotional, and physical state, right? For the benefit of the child. And in fact, for your own growth too, right? So that you can also be a better version of yourself.
So I hope that in no way we come across that we don't appreciate what the parent is going through. In fact, on the contrary, we value and we recognize that whatever that the parent has gone through, the couple has gone through for the dispute to happen and for decision to divorce, right, is a valid one and it's an important one.
Yeah.
And we recognize that it is important and it has caused a lot of, I guess, emotional hurt, pain, even psychological ones, even physical ones for some, and we're not downplaying any of those things, and they are valid. And they sometimes, when they choose to go their separate ways, is an important one. In fact, for some families, we know it's better to proceed with the divorce because it's this unhealthy, unsafe, right, for you all to continue to be in a relationship. And the best way is to just part ways. Yes, there are all those, right? We are hoping to encourage while you seek safety for yourself and well-being for yourself, which is very important. And we want to recognize that and we want to appreciate the need for that, right? But we also recognize that there's help available to be able to have those conversations about keeping safe with the consideration of something also important to you, which likely may be your children. Right? And also your life post-divorce, because yes, you may part ways, it's important that you part ways, but there's more to you in your life than just the hurt that you've gone through and the possibility of you still needing to interact with your partner by virtue of the fact that you all have a child together.
Yeah.
Right? Obviously, there are also those that I just want to part ways totally, right? And both agrees that I don't see each other anymore, and one person will just look after the kids. They have care and control, even full custody for that matter. Sure, I mean that could be a bit clean, but we will encourage also. Let's talk about having to be in a better place, so that you can do well for yourself. Have a greater clarity of mind, even better mind space, heart space, so that the child you're looking after, will be looking after moving forward in many years to come thereafter, right, will also develop a very healthy and positive relationship with you, and the child will thrive. With a lot of handles that you are able to provide for the child, and the child will be able to be happy, be in a better mental space, and emotional space as well.
Yeah.
And I can understand that it's really hard for the couples themselves.
For sure,
because-
yes.
Yes.
I cannot imagine the amount of grief they have to go through, the amount of dilemma they have to put themselves through to, satisfy everyone.
Yeah, and they will have to think about many important decisions.
Exactly. I mean, while the child may feel the abandonment or the rejection, the party may feel the same way too. In a case of a divorce, one party may think about their own self-worth. What happened, their own limiting belief, I'm not good enough anymore, as a spouse. And therefore, I'm being abandoned, I'm being rejected. And then coaching comes to help to pick them up, pick themselves up. Coaching provides a support to help them to reconnect back with their own self-worth, reconnect back with their own strengths, their resources that actually you can do it. You were this person before, and you can bring that person back. That your competent self, whoever you are, that beautiful you. It's also coaching in that sense help to bring the person back on their feet, ground them and build that confidence back in them, so that with that positive and emotional state, then they can be a role model to their children. That's what we enjoy our work in that sense when we see the shift in the parties.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether that has changed, but I believe that even for now, in some cultures, divorce is a stigma, right? So how hard is it for couples, right, to deal with this stigma, but yet being able to seek help when they need it? Do you all feel that they are a bit hesitant sometimes to talk about these things?
Unless you hold certain values, my experience is largely it will not be so stigmatized.
Okay.
Like when I say certain values, basically means that I because of a certain faith that I subscribe to, a religious faith, which informs me that divorce is either not allowed or it should be seen a certain way, unless I come from that kind of a cultural background, right, values upbringing. Typically, I won't say for all, but typically divorce is another thing that I do, right? A life decision that I make, right, for me to progress in life, right? So we have to deal with that as it is, right? If that was the case, and it's like many other major life decisions, then would you want to be clear about why you make those decisions, what the consequences, what impact is creating, the implications, right? In this case, for our work, there are children involved most of the time. So is this part of the consideration? It's a major life decision, and that will even means things like going to school, and because if you have joint custody, that would mean that both parties, father and mother, will have to make joint decisions. Or if the kids are actually need medical support and make medical decisions, for example, joint custody also means that you have to make those decisions together. Can you even talk about it? You may have a certain view on education, but we are co-parenting now. How can we work with each other to make a joint decision? Right? Such that you don't further, if there was any to begin with, have the child experience like being pulled apart kind of a situation, right? Which we don't want to continue to put them in that situation, even post-divorce. Right? Yeah.
You talk about sometimes it escalates into violence, right? How often at times in your experience, right, do you actually see that happen?
I'm biased because I work in a space that largely deal with those families, coming for help for applying for protection, seeking help, even for the state to understand what my child is going through or even I'm going through, and then have the state come in to evaluate, the real danger that my child is subjected to. So in the worst case scenario, the state will take over, and there's child protection involved, and then there's ongoing investigation and so on and so forth. And on my part, as a parent being a victim of violence, for example, then I'm encouraged to actually apply for protection for myself. Yeah. So in that sense, I'm biased. I'm dealing with this to begin with. Right. I am in that space. So there are a lot, obviously. Right. And I think my personal experience is that as we go through the whole COVID and coming out of it, I think there's a lot of angst, a lot of like tension, a lot of stress going in. I almost see each other, they see each other every day. And sometimes a lack of communication skills, lack of ability to code emotions, then sometimes from a simple, I used to speak very loudly to like now banging table and chairs, now moving forward to throwing tables or items on the table, to now punching the whole wardrobe and causing a dent and now hitting at somebody. Could be hitting my child or could be hitting my spouse for that matter. And then it continues, to even perpetuate after the whole lockdown, staying at home kind of a situation. So there's still remnants of it, right? I wouldn't say that it's absent entirely, right? But we still have to deal with this and support some families.
And how does that impact the child?
Significantly, I was sharing earlier about their sense of worry, their sense of being unsafe. So if I say anything wrong, and then maybe even daddy will actually shout at me or hit me, or this is very scary to begin with already, about the shouting part, right? Or worse still, even to touch me, and after that I'm bruised or I bleed, or that's even worse. So to a child, that's very traumatic, right? Yeah. Notwithstanding the fact there are some families also who subject physical punishment. I'm not talking about just caning, I'm talking about like subject them to like eating chili, or kneeling down, sitting at the corner, or in front of like a table, or for some family in front of the altar, for example, and they need to make amends because this is basically not right.
Yeah.
All very traumatic to the child, right? Yeah. already the environment is already unsafe, but you're subjecting me to all this.
Yeah.
And I do not know what I've done, and all I'm getting is that you're shouting at me, or I'm subjecting to all this, what I call punitive, not so meaningful consequence, right? Punishment. What do I learn as a result of doing all that?
Yeah.
Right? I'm not even told that I did something wrong as a result of I said this or I did that. I straight away I'm just punished, and it's so extreme for some, right? Yeah. So very developmentally inappropriate.
Yeah.
And I always worry for the child, and my team and I, the clinical team, will always try our best to see how we can act in the best interest of the child.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think witnessing all this behavior, all this violence at home, right? The child themselves has got some unresolved anger, grief that they don't know how to express, and sometimes it's manifested through behavior. That's why Nick was talking about, the child's behavior is really, cannot control the kind of thing. So these are things that, from a coaching perspective, is really coaching the parent.
Yeah.
Look for telltale signs of your child. Do you understand what your child is needing from an emotional perspective? Pay more attention, be more intentional. When it comes to engaging your child.
Yeah. So Joan, in your line of work, I think everyone can agree that no one should exert any violence on a child, right? But when a parent or both parents are going through this, what do you think is happening in their heads?
I think through my clients, it's because anger, hurt, and in sometimes when we want to express our frustration and anger, the first people that we always express or is on our loved ones. It's very. I mean, when we're angry in the workplace, we just walk off. We don't become violent to our colleague, right? When a colleague triggered and make us angry, we just walk off. But when it is at home, sometimes we just scream at our children because of something that's unmet here, right? There's something that's unmet in us, and sometimes we don't even know what is it. We just feel frustrated, especially when both parties has got different values. And they trigger each other. And who suffer? The child. Because the child is the nearest, can access to the child. Shut up, I'm talking. Even that screaming, like what Nick's talked about, right? Even the yelling in itself already have an impact on the child.
Yeah.
So sometimes I feel that when such things happen, it could be, unspoken and differing expectations. That's why it's pent up inside. And of course, different values. And all of us, right, as we progress, as people do change, right? When we first marry, we have this set of common values.
Yeah.
As we progress in our marriage and in our relationship, we all do change because of circumstances change, right? And our values change, our needs change. But the thing is that couples forgot to check in with each other. They forgot to uncover and find new information of, if I see a difference in my spouse, what is it that I want to know about? The curiosity is no longer there. And sometimes this leads to, the intimacy is no longer there in that sense, right? And I feel that a couple needs to have that physical intimacy for them to continue, to experience the love for each other in the midst of fighting all the challenges together.
Yeah. Nick, when we had a conversation earlier, you talk about this thing called cycle of violence. Would you want to share with the public what is it about?
Yeah, so we do a lot of this in my work previously. The cycle of violence basically talks about somebody experiencing violence from a perpetrator and then being informed that actually I didn't mean to do it, and then make amends, make amends, and there's reconciliation, and then reconciliation happens, and then they go back into the relationship, right? And then everything should be all fine and dandy already after that. But after that, if something happens again, then we should call it a trigger, and then the violence happens again, right? And then for somebody who is constantly experiencing violence and being treated violently, because of that cycle that they go through, there's always this stage where I know this is going to be better because he promised me or she promised me that it won't happen again, right? And after that, it happens again, right? So the cycle repeats to a point where when it gets too severe, the violence, I still think that it's going to be okay, all right? And it becomes so normal already, So when things becomes really bad, you really need to get help. You still think the same way because it's going to be better.
Yeah.
But I'm really bruised. I'm really all beaten up, but I still am saying that it's okay because he now she recognizes that this is wrong, and then we have reconciled, we have apologized to each other, and life carries on after this, know. But before you know it happens again. Right, so this is a cycle of violence that repeats by itself for somebody experiencing violence from day one, and becomes a habit that the thinking is such that it's going to be okay, and it goes up and up. So unless and until somebody breaks the cycle, or you can hopefully through coaching recognize that, this is not healthy, I'm going to continue being like that or be treated like that to my detriment or to my disadvantage, right? Unless somebody breaks the cycle, or I own self on my own break that, come out of the cycle of violence, I will continue to be in this. So if I was in this cycle and I have my children involved, I will not be able to see that actually it's causing a lot of danger to my kid, right? And that's the greatest worry, that we have. And because the adult can't see that this is so dangerous already, and it's getting even more dangerous. Not only will cost your life, but also will cost your child's life. So we need to find ways to help the person going through this or in the cycle of violence to have clarity and work them towards a space where they can confidently make a decision, and also ensure that their support and the supporting environment is ready to actually be there for them. Because it's easy to say that I need help and I want to break the cycle of violence, but if I do this, the perpetrator might pursue me, So I need to make sure that at least for us, the professionals, we need to ensure that all your safety plans are in place.
I see.
So that in the event where you are ready, so in the interim, you actually can still be in the unsafe environment. But now that you are aware that you need to break this cycle of violence, I am ready to make a decision. We need to work them to a situation where the day will come, you break out the cycle, but you have a place to be safe. To be a physical space where the perpetrator can't even find you, or you have people who will be able to act on your behalf because you're still unable to stand up to this perpetrator.
I see.
Right? Because I'm still learning how to stand up for myself. And I'm so used to the perpetrator. The moment they say certain words, it'll make me feel like, I did not say anything anymore. Or I did not act on anything anymore. So I need to be ready. So the person working with me need to make sure I'm prepared for that. Right? So that's where we come in.
I see.
Right? Yeah. So that's the cycle of violence and involves a lot of work with working with the person in the cycle of violence and also preparing the resources around them, right, to come in. Yeah.
Seems like a really hard conversation.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. It's hard.
Like in your experience, right, how often do they allow intervention? Because the reason why I use the word allow, because it seems like it's still the journey that they have to walk through. And even if an onlooker or an outsider tells the person, hey, you really need help, right? Most of the time it's up to them to decide when they need it, right? So in your experience, how often do they allow that? Or where is that point where they allow that to happen?
It's hard. It's hard because we're dealing with a lot of habits, right? Conditioned behavior. Like for example, in the cycle of violence alone itself, right? The conditioned behavior is that I will accept the apology and think that it's going to be okay. And that's conditioned in me to think that way, to respond that way. For me to break out of that requires a lot of, I guess, clarity, factual information given to me and recognizing it's dangerous. Also a therapeutic process for me to recognize what is important for me. To a point where I need to act. So I need to have a certain shift. Not only in in my mindset, but psychologically, to shift that, hey, this is actually may not be so right now. Oh yeah, and I'm ambivalent, we call it. That means I can recognize this is right, but yet as soon as I say this is wrong, and I'm at the point of like, yeah, I should be making a decision on this, right? Because if I continue to do this, right, then it should be like quite bad for not only myself but my kids as well. So as long as they're there and they're ambivalent, it's good.
Yeah.
Because they can now begin to like weigh the odds already. Otherwise, you're just only on one side,
Yeah.
right? Thinking that it's all okay, but actually it's not. But once they are shifted, then you can continue to work with them to a point where they go all the way. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Right? And it takes a bit of work, and it takes a bit of willingness also to come in to have those conversations.
Yeah.
And why we do what we do is because we know all the while it's always been more therapeutic in nature. The conversations are more clinical in nature. All right, but we don't have to be the case. That's why we thought that coaching would be a better option, right? If it's hard, but if you're more than happy to actually have those clinical conversations because there's trauma involved, there's a panic involved, which involves your mental health, your mental space. Then yes, let's continue to have those conversations, right? But otherwise, have the conversation at the coaching space, where you can still have the opportunity to largely self-direct.
Yeah.
Not to say the clinical conversation even self-direct, but I think we are looking more in terms of the clinical impact. And then you make those decisions, right? And with clarity, you can make those decisions. And then move with the coaching to have, I guess, a greater autonomy and empowerment to make those decisions.
Exactly, because coaching is very forward-looking, right?
Yeah.
So when you equip yourself with all these resources that you have within you through coaching, you know how to handle those things, those situations when it arises. Yes.
When a person is in a state of that conditioned behavior that you spoke about, right? As an expert, what would you recommend the first step to be to get them to an ambivalent state where they recognize, oh, okay, this is something bad. I really need to reconsider and start to weigh the pros and cons.
I think the important thing is to recognize that they have support, right? And actually, there's a high chance also that the loved ones around them are also saying things, right, from day one.
Yeah.
Right? But I mean, it's natural for them to, at that point in time, may not be so attuned to their so-called, I guess, heads up, warning for some even, but I think you reach a point where you have to like, oh, this cannot really. And then you want to remember all the things that's been highlighted previously, right? And it could be even like a single comment from a teacher of your child, and you're having a parent-teacher conference, for example, and then the teacher highlighted, hey, your child is actually behaving in a certain way. That should kind of like make you ask the question, hey, how come like that? Where is this coming from?
Yeah.
Right? And all these kind of like telltale signs, right, should kind of like guide you to make certain decisions for yourself. And then after that, have the openness, I suppose, and the willingness eventually to seek professional help. Not for the purpose of just solving the problem, but let's have a conversation, initial conversation. Say, hey, I'm experiencing, or I'm feeling this. What does that mean? And let's have it bounce off us. Yeah. It's not meant to work on anything, but at least have a third party to talk with you, professional, to talk with you about it, and then have insight to what you are dealing with, and then you can make a decision thereafter, right? And then you can do a lot of that, right, in a coaching space. Sometimes, because maybe it could be cultural, that having those conversations in a clinical setting may give you a certain discomfort, so a coaching space would be a lot better. Right? I guess is to assist you with those conversations, making you don't feel so even more uncomfortable. Already you're dealing with all this, right? Have those conversations first.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Thanks for that. Let's take a break. Right. In the next part, we'll talk more about the solutions out there and what are your options to choose from.
Sure. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Okay.
Okay.
How was it? Okay.
That was great. The conversation.
Yeah.
It's very insightful.
So I say flow, right?